I noticed that there's a lot of confusion about what are ancestors, what are spirit guides, what are guardian spirits, what are angels, so forth and so on. So hopefully within this video, after explaining the difference between them, you'll get a better understanding of what they are, how to communicate with them, and how to incorporate them in your life. That's Spirit Fam, peace and blessings. This is Derric More. And initially this video was going to be titled How to Communicate with Your Ancestors, Your Spirit Guides, and Your Guardian Spirits. But after careful consideration, decided to go ahead and switch it up, change up the title and everything, mainly because I noticed that there's a lot of confusion about what are ancestors, what are spirit guides, what are guardian spirits, what are angels, so forth and so on. So hopefully within this video, after explaining the difference between them, you'll get a better understanding of what they are, how to communicate with them, and how to incorporate them in your life. Okay? So before we begin, what needs to be understood is that most ancient people all around the world pretty much had a similar thought process about our environment. One of the things, if you do a comparative study of ancient religions, one of the things that you'll find out is that the ancient people went ahead and they realized that there was something that existed alongside us. They couldn't really go ahead and put a finger on it and say what it was, but they knew that there was something that existed. So for instance, they saw that when an individual was in love and the individual acted out of love, that there was no physical person that was actually encouraging and motivating and inspiring this individual to act out of love. But they saw that there was something that existed right alongside them that was basically motivating, encouraging, and inspiring this individual to act out of love. Same thing for a person who was envious. Again, there was no physical person. They didn't see any physical person or physical thing that was making or encouraging and inspiring this individual to act out of envy. But again, they saw that they recognized and they saw that there was something that was there. Now, after going ahead and thinking about this and analyzing this something that was there, they knew it was invisible. It was hidden. They couldn't see it with their physical eyes, but there was something that was there. And eventually what happened was they concluded that this something was an energy. So after going ahead and looking at this and recognizing and identifying that it was an energy, they began to recognize and began to basically call anything and everything that motivated and inspired people to do something. They referred to it or called it an energy. So you had an energy of love. You had an energy of envy. You had an energy of hatred. You had an energy of compassion. You had an energy of peace. There was an energy of war. You have all these different energies, and all these different energies is what was inspiring and motivating and encouraging people to do certain things. Excuse me. So, if all these different energies existed, and all these different energies were encouraging people and inspiring people, eventually what happened was that the ancient people went ahead and they started thinking, and they said, all these energies must come from one main and large energy. And this main large energy is what we refer to nowadays as a force. Now, again, if you did a comparative study of ancient religions, you'll find out that most people in ancient times had this similar type of thought process. They had this similar type of, or similar cosmology, okay? And for instance, excuse me, if you went ahead and you study the Kemetic lore, you'll find out that the main force in the Kemetic tradition is Ra. You'll also find out, if you again do a comparative study, you'll see that this same idea, this same notion exists in other traditions as well. For instance, in the Hebraic tradition, the main force is called El. Now, just like in the Kemetic tradition, the main force is Ra, and from Ra, you have all these different energies. In the Hebraic tradition, the main force is El, and from El, you have Elyon, Elohim, El Shaddai, and so forth and so on. So the obvious question that comes to mind then is, why is it that the Kemetic and other African traditions, why are those people who go in here and believe in this, why are they considered and portrayed as being idol worshippers when they're talking about one force and various energies, in comparison to the ancient Hebraic traditions? These people, the Jewish people, are not considered to be idol worshippers. The obvious answer is that Western scholars went ahead and, after going ahead and analyzing and seeing all these, doing a comparative study, Western scholars went ahead and they emphasized that El is a force, and that all the different attributes of the El are archetypes of the El. Whereas in the Kemetic tradition and the other African traditions, instead of saying that Ra is the force, they said Ra is the sun god, and all the other energies are gods and goddesses, or spirits, and so forth and so on. So as you can see, this is where the confusion comes in at. It's a similar system, but in going ahead and saying that they're similar, we have Western scholarly bias or biasness. That's the reason why there's so much confusion about it. If we were to go ahead and say, and basically erased and got rid of their biasness, instead of going ahead and try to portray Westerners as being more superior than all the other traditions or all the other people all around the world, if they would have went ahead and got rid of that and just went ahead and just told you Ra is the force, and you have all these other divinities, which are, all these other divinities are energies, okay? If they would have went ahead and got rid of that part right there and just went ahead and said, this is what it is, okay? Then you would have gone ahead and you would have automatically concluded that because of these quote unquote divinities being archetypes of the one force or archetypes of the Ra, you would have gone ahead and started to understand that if they're archetypes exist within and outside of us, which means that whenever you go ahead and you see certain things that occur in nature, it's mirroring what's occurring within you. This is the reason why in the Jewish tradition, it is prohibited, considered profane, a sin, a grave sin, for you to make any kind of image of any of the different or attributes or archetypes of the L. This is the way they went ahead and made sure to ensure that you do not confuse the fact that the archetypes exist outside and within you. But this is how you access them. It is through your mind. Whereas over here, by going ahead and calling the Kemetic energies, by calling them gods and goddesses, you think they exist outside of your being. Okay? So, how do you communicate with them? Well, let me make it clear. First of all, what I'm saying in regards to divinities, your guardian angels, your gods and goddesses, let me make it clear. They're all archetypes of the main force, which means they exist within you and outside of you. Okay? The access is through your mind. Okay? And because they exist within you and outside of you, and they're archetypes, the way they communicate is not like we communicate to each other. Okay? They communicate through symbols. Key word again, archetypes. So they communicate to you symbolically. And the best way I have found to communicate to your guardian angel, your spirit, your guardian spirits, your gods and goddesses, whichever term you want to use, the best way I have found to communicate with them is by understanding that since they exist within you and exist outside of you, the best way to go ahead and communicate with them is to really commit yourself to learning a legend. All the ancient legends, this is what they were based on, because the authors of all the ancient legends, they did not write these legends or create these legends as them being gods and goddesses that exist outside of our being. They understood they were energies, and these energies are interacting with each other. So that's how they wrote their legends. That's the reason why you can read any of these legends and it continues to keep giving you great, profound understanding and insight about a lot of things. Next down the line are your spirit guides. Okay. Now, again, this is where part of the confusion comes in at, because you have some people who go ahead and they classify everybody as being spirit guides. Okay. And they'll call angels and anything, they'll call them all spirit guides. And that's not really correct. Okay. Spirit guides, it's not really correct, and not saying that I'm an authority on the issue, but it's not really correct, and it's confusing especially for individuals who don't know anything about it. Okay. So technically, spirit guides refers to anyone who basically has walked the planet and has transitioned. Okay. If they've walked the planet and they've transitioned, that means that they know about the life experience. They've had that experience of actually living on the planet. So they've had that life experience, but they've transitioned, meaning they've shed their physical body. They no longer have a physical body. However, their soul continues to exist, because their soul is the eternal part of our being. So their soul continues to exist, and they exist as a spirit. Okay, so the correct term, or the technical term, is spirits of the dead. Now, I know a lot of people, they don't want to go ahead and use spirits of the dead because of all the horror movies and all that kind of crap. But technically that's what they are. Okay, so separate yourself from from that the negative connotations of what spirits of the dead mean. Spirits of the dead just simply refers to the fact that you have people who they walk the planet, and they know about the life experience, the physical life experience, but they no longer have a physical body, but they continue to exist. Their soul continues to exist. These are also energies that the ancient people went ahead and they realized that still exist. Okay, so they have an influence on us. They inspire and motivate and encourage us to do things. It's not like the archetypes, okay, not like the gods and goddesses or the angels and so forth and so on, not like them, all right, but in a similar idea. Okay, so understanding that when we talk about your spirits, your spirit guides, meaning your ancestors or people who again walk the planet and have transitioned but have gravitated towards you because of common interest or whatever the case may be. Because of that, the way to communicate with them is through symbols as well. But because they've gone through the life experience, the way in which you communicate with your ancestors, the way you communicate with your spirit guides, is by offering things or by communicating to them the way you want to feel or the way you would feel. All right. Now, I know that sounds a little confusing, but you think about it. For instance, if I wanted to go ahead and give coffee, okay, give you an idea. This is a common offering that is given to ancestors. What does coffee do to you? Coffee goes ahead and makes you alert. So to communicate to your ancestors that you want them to be alert in your life, you offer coffee. Okay, they understand that's what the coffee is for. Okay, and if you go ahead, for instance, if you offered water, for instance, okay, why do you offer water? Water is to go ahead and quench your thirst. Okay, it's to cool you off. All right, you drink it when you're excited. You drink it when to calm your body. You drink it to go ahead and relax you. Again, you offer water to your ancestors for that same reason. Okay, you offer light to your ancestors. Okay, what does candlelight does? If you imagine it being dark and you go ahead and you offer light, okay, you go ahead and you light a candle. What does a candle do? It illuminates. Okay, it brings a little bit of comfort. All right, brings a little bit of warmth. Well, same idea. This is why you offer candles to your ancestors. Okay, now, so understand the difference between them, between your ancestors and spirit guides and your guardian spirits or the gods and goddesses and so forth and so on. Understand the difference between the two. Okay, you can't offer you can offer candles to your, you can offer candles to the gods and goddesses, or like I said, the archetypes or the guardian spirits, but it's not really, I don't want to say it's not doing anything, but in my experience, they don't really need it because they are from the source. They are from the force. Okay. Whereas to your ancestors are so completely different. They need it. Okay. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding in regards to how to communicate with them. Okay. One of them needs it, the other one doesn't. It's like, again, another thing that comes to mind. Based upon my understanding, based upon my experience, when you go ahead and, and I hear people say, okay, well, they made this offering to the gods and goddesses or whatever the case may be. If you understand that they're from the forest, okay, your quote unquote gods and goddesses are from the forest, or they're of the forest, they don't really depend upon any food offering. They don't really need a food offering. However, ancestral spirits or spirit guides do need a food offering because it helps to sustain their presence in our life. Okay? Hopefully those of you who are there, you get it. Okay? And like I said, it's an interesting subject. It's a fascinating subject. But once you go in here and you make that connection, I'm telling you, it's magical. Okay? So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of how to communicate with them, to communicate with, whatever entity you are working with. Again, we're not just going into this blindly. We're not just going ahead and doing this. This, again, is from an occult and metaphysical perspective. Now, that being said, as I've stated before, I am not an authority on this. I'm only speaking based upon my experience. I'm telling you based upon my experience of how it worked for me. If it works different for you, great. By all means, please share. Okay? But you got to go ahead and you got to get into it and you got to experiment with it for yourself in order for you to go ahead and see what works. Again, once you go ahead and you make that connection, once you see what works, it's magical. Okay? So hopefully that helped you. Hopefully that made sense. Again, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to drop me a line. Until next time, fam. Head to poo. Peace.